So after Aleenah finished her undergrad career, she moved on to currently working at Microsoft as a product marketing manager, where she uses storytelling to increase awareness and perception of Microsoft Edge. So outside of work, Aleenah also freelance writes and speaks at events like this to help share the power of storytelling and how you can use it to leverage your job search. Aleenah also is a multifaceted and heavy hitter worker in her industry, and she really says it best to encapsulate all of her strengths. She once said, you can usually find her bridging storytelling and tech, creativity and strategy, and representation and authenticity by acknowledging the highs and lows of the journey. At these intersections, Aleenah truly creates magic. So please give a warm welcome to today's speaker, Aleenah Ansari.
Is this working? Oh, wow. It's been so long since I've been on a real stage. I'm usually on a virtual stage. But thank you so much for the warm welcome. I think it hits different when someone else introduces you, like you hear about your own work from someone's perspective. So I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to be here and talk about using LinkedIn to stand out in the job and internship search. This is definitely something I wish I had in college. I kind of started, getting into LinkedIn once I was at Microsoft. I thought I'm the best person to tell my own story. And if companies aren't going to notice me, then I'll make sure that I'm representing the best version of myself. And that's led to a lot of inbound requests. Companies seeking me out, especially companies that rejected me all throughout college, suddenly are in my DMs asking me if I want to apply. And that's the position that I want all of you to be in, to really take charge of your job and internship search. I think there's nothing more powerful than that. So, no, that's okay.
Here we go.
Oh, so I just clicked to go? Okay.
Or the arrows.
Okay, cool. And this was addressed at the beginning, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This is really important for me as a queer Pakistani woman. I think our stories have always been important. They've always mattered, but this month is a gentle reminder to keep amplifying the stories of ourselves and others. And that's been a big part of how I've gotten where I am today. So to give you some context about me and how I got here, Emily mentioned that I'm a product marketing manager at Microsoft. I've been there for 2.5 years, but the story actually goes back much further than that, which I'll talk about in a second. I also consider myself a journalist at heart. So all throughout college, I wrote hundreds of stories that were focused on entrepreneurs of color, educators, and creatives that were committed to lifting as they climb, which is something I resonated with, and I was able to capture their story. First for my school newspaper, and now for the Seattle Times, CNBC, and other outlets that I freelance for. And lastly, as I mentioned, I'm a queer Pakistani woman in tech, which is an identity that I always hold. All of those things are in play whenever I'm doing a workshop like this, whether I'm in an interview, I'm doing a one-on-one, and it's important for me to acknowledge that here as well. So you might be wondering, how does someone like me get to Microsoft, somebody who considers themselves a storyteller at a big tech company? And the long and short of it is that I actually didn't expect to be at Microsoft. I remember 5 years ago, I was at my school's library. I was studying public health at the time, on track to try to be a doctor. I was kind of holding on to that. But I knew that what I really loved was storytelling and content strategy, and I didn't really know how I would do that. And I logged onto the Microsoft website, and there was one job opening for an internship for a user experience or UX writer. And there was a bullet that said, we're looking for a storyteller that loves everything from a well-crafted fragment to a 5-page brief. And I was like, is this real? Is this a storytelling role at Microsoft, a company that I had never even visited or really saw myself going to? And I decided to apply. 2 months later, a recruiter said, hey, we really like your resume, come and interview for us. I interviewed on a Thursday and I got a job offer on a Friday. And it's been 5 years since that first interview, and I've done a multitude of things at Microsoft, from being a writer and video producer, marketer, content strategist, but all of it has really focused on storytelling. And I think some of the things that helped me do that was telling a compelling story about my transferable skills. So I remember in my first interview, I was kind of talking to the person that became my manager, and he was saying, why Microsoft? Why now? And I was really honest with him to say that, I was on this path of just switching out of medicine, but I saw tech as an opportunity to reach millions more people. When you're a doctor, you can treat people on a case-by-case basis. When we work at a company like Microsoft, you can reach so many more people. If you transform technology, you can transform people's lives. And that story is what really enabled me to stand out and to get that opportunity. I also built connections with other storytellers in tech. So I found out that there were people like me who really were trying to bridge creativity and strategy. And I was able to find somebody who ended up advocating for me when I pitched my first full-time role. So earlier, somebody mentioned that maybe you're creating a job that doesn't exist. And I actually did that for what became my first role. I approached a team and I said, I think you need someone like me. You don't have somebody who's focused on writing and video production, but I think I could be that person for you. Let me interview, let me do an internship. And if you like me, you can convert full-time. And the advocate that I found actually helped the team on the back end find the budget. I did the internship, I converted, and it became my path into Microsoft. So all that to say, if you're not seeing exactly what you want, why not pitch it? Why not create it for yourself? And if you can do it somewhere like Microsoft, I think that you can do it really anywhere that you go. So all that to say, your non-traditional background, your story is a strength, and it's been a strength of mine over and over again, and it's been the reason that I am where I am today. And I want to help you do some of those things too. So in terms of the agenda today, we're going to talk about self-assessment. How do you assess your current interest and skill set? And we'll have some time to write out your elevator pitch, which we'll talk about. 2, talk about strategies to level up your LinkedIn. And then 3rd, some tips that you can use to build authentic relationships. So let's kick it off with the first one. So when it comes to telling a story about yourself on your LinkedIn, in your elevator pitch, you really want to connect the dots with where you've been, your current experience, the thing that you're studying, to where you want to go, your dream job, an opportunity, maybe even the role that you want to pitch. And we'll talk about how to kind of go from here to here. Ideally, you're at the end by the end of this workshop. So the next couple slides will be some reflection questions that you can ask yourself when you're trying to figure out what is my dream job, or even what's the next best thing that I can do for my career. That's something I often ask my clients because I think it can be really scary to think what comes after this, what is my dream job? But ask yourself, what's the next best thing that I can do for my career, for my major, for my program? So the first thing to reflect on is your passion. And I think of this in 2 buckets. The things that are energizing and the things that are exhausting. So energizing being what projects or work get you out of bed in the morning? What are you the most excited to do? I think if you can't tell already, I really love telling stories. And I also love making stories accessible on a wide scale. And that's something I've done over and over in my career. But it's equally important to think about what exhausts you. What are the things that you don't want to do? And even what are the tasks or projects you wish that you could outsource to somebody else? So I bring this up because sometimes we do internships, we take classes, we do projects, and we're actually realizing that we don't really love it. Maybe you were studying a certain major or program, and then you took a class and you realized, actually, I never want to do this again. This wasn't my cup of tea. I did like a whole year of organic chemistry and I hated it, but like I did it. And I was like, you know what? I would like to never do this again. And even things like that is intel on what you might want, what you might not want. If you are applying for a job and you see something that's not in your wheelhouse, maybe you don't apply to it, or maybe you try to find a sister team that's a better fit. So this can help you get a full picture of what's right for you. Kind of part and parcel is your strengths. And I think of this in response to 2 questions. What can others count on you for? And what kind of consistent feedback have you gotten from colleagues and mentors? This is a little bit easier when you're in the workforce. Emily and I know that we have performance evaluations every year, and we actually have this thing called perspectives where our coworkers can write feedback about us and our strengths and areas of growth. But this is something that you could also do for yourself. Even a really simple example is to make a Google form or whatever software you use and write out these questions and make an anonymous form and send it to your colleagues, your mentors, your academic advisors, and see the way that people describe you and what you're known for. And then from there, you can kind of reassess, Maybe I call myself a storyteller, but if I were to ask my manager, they would call me a strategist, or maybe they would call me a creative director. And that's an opportunity for me to say, okay, do those labels really align with my strengths, or is that something I might want to shift? So this is a good opportunity to kind of tap into your community and see the ways that they would describe you, but also for you to reflect on your own strengths. And then lastly, ideal context, which kind of speaks to the questions that were asked earlier about the type of place that you want to work. And instead of thinking about just the job title or the company that you want to work for, or the place or the discipline, because I think that is one step, but it's not the only step, think about the problems that you want to solve. So to give you an example, I have a lot of kind of like clients and mentees who tell me that they want to help people, right? They want to make the world better. But my question is, in what ways do you want to do that? What problems are you solving for? Do you want to make knowledge more accessible? Do you want to promote equity in large organizations? What kind of problem are you optimizing for, and how can you be part of the solution? And this also speaks to the culture that you want to be in. So this image that you're seeing on the right was from a Microsoft Pride live stream. That was actually something that Microsoft hosted. And one of my colleagues who knew me tapped me and said, hey, I know that you love hosting and storytelling. Do you want to be one of the co-hosts of this kind of large scale event? And very few places have I ever been asked to speak to being queer, let alone represent that for a larger company. And that was a sign to me that I'm at a company that really values me, not just from an equity perspective, but sees my identity and invites me to reflect on it. But this can also be more tactical. What kind of team do you want to work for? Do you want to be at a smaller scale startup where you can be closer to the CEO and try a lot of things? Do you want to create something for yourself and be an entrepreneur or a freelancer like I am, where you have control? And it's okay if these answers shift over time, but doing that kind of reflection up front will help you answer this question when you're asked in interviews. And ideally, you'll find an intersection where your passions, strengths, and ideal context coincide. It might be hard to kind of hit all of these at once, but hopefully you're kind of meeting in the middle where you are able to grow. There's areas of growth and areas of opportunity, but there's some level of familiarity. So you're able to tap into who you are, but also feel like there's room for growth. At least that's what's been the best roles for me. So once you've done that reflection, I want to get into this question that is often asked during elevator pitches or at the beginning of interviews. Who are you? And it's kind of the most foundational story that you tell about yourself. Before you can tell somebody what kind of job you want, why you're qualified, even why you should get a scholarship, you have to tell people who you are, because they might not know until that very moment. And so I'm going to share a framework that you can use to answer this question. This can be a starting point. You may adapt it, and we can also leave time for everyone to kind of journal and share out. So the first part of an elevator pitch is kind of the problems that you solve, but through a specific lens. It could be your major or your field of study. It could be a job title or discipline that you're pursuing, but really focus on the problems that you solve and even who you advocate for. To give you an example of this, one of my friends, his job title is curriculum developer. And if he just told you that, he's at a company called Code Society. And if you just heard that, you might not know anything about what he does. But if he told you the problems that he solves, what you would hear is that he's focused on making software engineering knowledge more accessible by creating a curriculum that uses hip hop to teach algorithms and coding. And immediately once he told me, I was like, I wish I had that in college, because coding was so confusing to me. But if it was taught through music, if it was made fun, if it was made for somebody like me, maybe I wouldn't have been so afraid of coding whenever I've encountered it. And even a small shift like that creates such a great opportunity for connection. It's not just the job title, but the way that you're different in your work. The second part is the lens that you bring to your work. So maybe you want to be a program manager at Microsoft, but you're really committed to inclusion and reaching out to schools that aren't often featured on the list. Or you are a software engineer, but you're really good at building relationships and influencing people who are not on your team. Or maybe you're somebody who always sees problems and figures out how you can solve them, how you can innovate and find the right person. This to me is the section about what makes you, how you differentiate yourself. And oftentimes this piece is what nobody else is saying. It's the part that only you can tell because it's your story. And then third is an offer or a clear call to action. So if I was answering this question, who are you, in an interview, I would reiterate my excitement for the role, and also like what I hope to share more about my experience. Or if you were having a one-on-one with somebody who's in a role that you really admire, maybe you would mention 2 to 3 things that you want to talk about. And so that way there's a clear path forward from this question to the rest of the conversation. This is what my elevator pitch looks like in this current moment. So if somebody asked me, who are you, in an interview, I would say that I'm currently a product marketing manager at Microsoft, specifically supporting educators and their use of Microsoft Edge, which is our browser. And I think this is a really important conversation because we know that teachers right now are embracing remote and hybrid work, and so many things have changed since I was in college 3 years ago. Everything was in person. There was no remote or hybrid options. And teachers are juggling a lot, to be honest. And so we want Edge to be a tool that supports productivity and security so they can focus on really being with students. And that's a story that I tell when I'm meeting people and telling them about my job. In terms of the lens that I bring to my work, I'm always talking about how I'm equal parts writer, creative problem solver, and journalist at heart. So I'm not just talking about technology, I'm talking about the people who built it, what motivates them, what makes this technology different, because stories are really how we connect with each other. And if I was in an interview, I would talk about how this experience in journalism and content strategy and marketing have afforded me opportunities to advocate for what we're creating and hopefully make even more impact in the next role that I take on. So now I want to invite you to write out your elevator pitch. Feel free to add or change things as is specific to you. But I encourage you to use these headers as markers. So highlighting your major and your field of study, the lens that you bring to your work, and then a call to action. You can pick a scenario that makes sense for you. So maybe you're doing this for an upcoming interview that you have, or even just a conversation with somebody that you admire in your field of study. We'll give 5 to 7 minutes for that, and we'll kind of check in to see how people feel.
All right, I'll put some music on, we'll set a timer. If you need a piece of paper, let us know, but also feel free to use the networking packet that's on your table so you can keep all your notes together. Thank you,
And if you have questions about any of this, feel free to raise your hand or let me know. Is there a way to make the timer smaller so they can still see the prompt?
Oh, yeah, smart.
Aki, what was the second question?
I'm putting it
1
back up.
second. Nice. It's buffering, yeah.
Pain buffer.
I know. I'm like watching it spin.
All right, y'all, 30 seconds.
30-second warning. And once this time wraps up, I would love to have one or two people share what you wrote down. Give us all some inspiration. Mm-hmm. Okay, wrap up your last sentence, your last thought.
Go back.
You can leave it here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would love to have someone in the audience share what you wrote. Just as a starting point. We have mics as well, so people on Zoom can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shar. So it's not good, but I kind of made sense in my brain. So I said, being a film and media major, it is important for me to cover and focus on how to close equity gaps amongst colleges and to give fair opportunities for minority groups. Then for number 2, I said, bringing a way to close equity gaps amongst minority communities will help benefit us for future generations to come. And that's how my small business also helps me give money back to them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Round of applause. Yeah, I think that really resonates with me because I always say you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
Representation is everything. So I think that's such a clear purpose statement. I think something to think about is what are the ways that you bring that to life? So you mentioned your small business. Is that are you connecting with filmmakers? Are, what part of the pipeline would be a question I'd have after.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead?
So my field of study is nursing. I want to be an LPN and I want to be in the medical field. My main focus is to bring resources and knowledge of just medicine to most of my family. I come from a lot of indigenous people, so a lot of them are basically naturopath medicine, which is great for certain things, but you also need to explore new development, especially with everything going on in the world today. Yeah. So I want to be able to bring my community together and help them and support my kids and along the way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I think that's so real, like especially with healthcare, it's one of the most intimate things that we have. So making sure people feel safe, they feel like they understand what's happening is really important. Thank you. Any last takers? Yes. I think we have one.
I do apologize. My answer's completely awful.
Don't apologize. Great place to
I think
practice.
for my area to be going to be network engineering, networks and the internet. And I sat here trying to think of what I'm going to write for number 2. I was committed to building relationships. It's better to have people to turn to their help. You know, there was actually a time when I actually helped set up a home network. You know,
You got the public speaking.
it doesn't really help when I code.
Oh, it's back.
Anyways, sorry. I was actually at a friend's house setting up a network connection, and this person was out in the middle of the woods. Well, not like
Wow.
testing 1, 2, 3. I think this might hit me. This person was like I would describe as a rural area.
Mhm.
Yeah. This wants to hear you. Everybody wants to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, I was just going to okay. And this was actually one of the people who inspired me to actually turn to network engineering, because they themselves came from the background of where their family was such a point that it's kind of almost suffocating, and I will admit I was almost in that position myself.
Mhm.
And seeing them trying to put up a smile despite the fact that they're carrying so much weight on their shoulders is the reason why I wrote that as my answer for number 2. Because I want someone to turn to me as much as I want.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's clear that a lot of you are really rooted in your community. You're not just doing your work for yourselves, but for other people. So thank you for sharing that and for being vulnerable. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll keep us moving. How much time do we have? Okay, so we're going to go through our next section, which is about LinkedIn. Just to take the temperature of the room, how many of you have a LinkedIn profile? So it exists, like maybe you haven't. Okay, we're seeing, okay. Does anyone feel really confident in their LinkedIn skills?
Oh, no.
Okay, great. So we have a lot, perfect audience for this. Cool. Well, first I want to talk about why LinkedIn and kind of why it's an important platform. And I think there's a few reasons that come to mind. The first is that we know that 70% of recruiters use LinkedIn, and not just in tech. My girlfriend is actually in ultrasound tech, and people are recruiting her all the time for new jobs. So any industry, they're probably on LinkedIn. It's not just people in tech like me, which means that whether you are using your profile actively or not, recruiters are finding it for keywords. So you might as well make it a strong reflection of yourself. Second being that it's a tool to build your network and connect with like-minded folks in your industry. So even if you're not looking for a job, you could find people to connect with, people that inspire you, and maybe your next role or opportunity could surprise you and be on LinkedIn. And 3, it's a place that you can not only share your wins, but also find new opportunities. We're kind of in the great resignation. A lot of people are leaving their jobs. So if you wanted to use LinkedIn to share a new job that you've gotten, or the fact that you're looking for a new one, I think there's a lot of community and awareness on that right now. So I'm going to go through a very basic anatomy of a LinkedIn profile. So if you don't know where to start with these couple things. So the first thing that's one of the most important is your headline. So if you look at someone's profile, headshot, okay, headshot's in the back, right? And then your name, your pronouns, and then the title that you have or your headline. So most people will put the job that they currently have or are about to have. She's doing her MBA right now. So it says incoming marketer at Microsoft Cloud. And for you, this could be your current job title, the school that you attend, the program that you're a student for. But there's also a place to add in some of these other roles and values that you have. So for Lizzie Ann, she runs a business, so it says founder at Hey Lizzie Ann. She also mentioned some of the companies that she's been at before, which may be important further in your career. If you want people from your program, from your school, from your community to find you, you can always put that there. And this is really, really important for search engine optimization. So that means if a recruiter is, let's say they're looking for a UX designer or someone, if you don't have that in your headline, they might not find you. You might not be considered for an opportunity. So the more that you do to optimize this and have it reflect the kind of work that you want to do and your values, the better aligned you'll be to find opportunities or be found for opportunities. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people will just kind of list out everything that they're involved in, like Microsoft, student, these different roles that you have. But you can also take an approach of having a phrase like some of you used in your elevator pitch. This is a Kosua, and her headline starts with bridging gaps between access and opportunity, which is something that a lot of you talked about. And then from there, you're also seeing words like content creator, storyteller, nano learning instructor. So there's a lot of different ways to use this. And like if you're a small business owner as well, I know LinkedIn has helped me find a lot of clients and partners to work with, and having it in my LinkedIn has made a big difference. We'll make these slides available after, but know that there are a lot of different things that you can use. And oftentimes we hold many of these identities at once. For example, I consider myself a marketer, a mentor, a community builder, a strategic creative. So it's not just one or the other. I think many can be at play at once. So it's worth asking yourself, if you were writing out your headline, what kind of keywords do you think you'd add? I'd love to have maybe 2 to 3 people from the audience shout out some phrases that they would add or that they currently have in their LinkedIn headline. Are there any that come to mind? What do you have right now?
This probably says manager or mentor.
Manager and mentor.
I want to do community builder.
Community builder. Yeah.
I'm editing mine right now.
Okay. Yeah. What are you adding or what are you changing?
I changed the way that I have it formatted. So I have my skill and then at the place. What I was doing was I was putting the place first. And then I added mentor.
Nice. Yeah. And that's because you would do training on a day-by-day basis. And this is very common in the industry where your job title doesn't reflect what you actually do. So having that would probably help you surface for opportunities like that. That's a great example. Okay, cool. The other section of a LinkedIn that I want to talk about, if you only did these things, the headline, obviously your name and your photo, this is the other big section that I would talk about. And for context, the summary section appears right below this. We're going to look at some profiles in a second, but name, headline, she has like hashtags that she typically writes about. And then the summary is kind of like the place that you write about yourself. And her first sentence is, actually, yeah, I think it starts with that phrase up at the top. So building some cool things for the creator economy, Web 3.0, and how we can foster meaningful connections. And then she has this sentence that is on her LinkedIn, her Twitter bio, and her portfolio that says, I like tech, business, and design for good. So what's great about this is you can actually leverage the elevator pitch that you just wrote and repurpose it on LinkedIn. So even if somebody isn't meeting you one-on-one, they can get a sense of what you're about and what you value. And to give you a cool example about Leah, actually, she mentions building some cool things for the creator economy. And since this moment, since I made this slide, she actually works for LinkedIn Creator. So she got a new job doing the exact thing that her profile speaks to her interest in. And she actually started a Web3 company, which I don't understand as much, but this is definitely something I see with her over and over. She'll kind of manifest it into existence by writing about it, and then people will know her for it, and it leads to her next opportunity. I just want to share a few other examples of what this can look like. This is Shua Chen, who's an entrepreneur. And the very first section of her profile says, a former entrepreneur who now invests in entrepreneurs and teaches entrepreneurship. Former air cadet, voice actress, Guinness World Record player, and gardening geek. And I think this is a good example of somebody who is such a prolific investor and entrepreneur is also telling you a little bit about who she is and what she values. LinkedIn isn't just a place where you're applying for a job. It's a place to show people who you really are and what you care about. This is a great way to do that. So now I want to go through a live LinkedIn critique. So this is the scenario that we'll be going through. This is great for audience participation. So let's say that you are a hiring manager at Microsoft and you're looking for interns for UX, UI roles. And for context, UX is user experience. And user experience design, people who have design, maybe graphic design experience. And these 5 profiles have come up first, and you're looking at them to decide who you would advance to the next stage. So in this case, a phone screening. So let me, oh, how did I do that?
Press the next escape key.
Okay. I thought I
There
pressed
it is. Yep.
Okay, cool. I see. So now I have to follow the map. Oh, there we go. Cool. So I just pulled up a couple profiles that came up for me. So yes, the scenario, you're applying for someone who's a UX UI, potentially for an internship. So all I did was search UX UI design, and these were some of the profiles that came up. So let me scroll down. Actually, let's start here. So if you came across the student, you're a hiring manager, what are your first impressions based on just this? So I guess the banner, not necessarily the name, but the banner and the headline. What would you think immediately? It's hard to get a full picture, so I can also, let me expand this as well. So welcome to my LinkedIn, Taiwanese Canadian student, majoring in CS, minor in design, loves teaching, research, and creating projects that give meaningful experiences. Any gut reactions? Mm-hmm.
I would think that it's an artistic, creative person.
Mm-hmm. What makes you say that?
Besides her info saying that she's a science student, the header,
Mm-hmm.
all the drawings, everything makes me think that she likes art.
Mm-hmm.
She's creative.
Yeah, so creative, somebody who likes design, cares about it. Yeah. Any other kind of impressions or thoughts if this person was a candidate?
This, not like a whole lot to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of
Right.
my name, and this is where I work, and I love like, there's not anything super specific
Mm-hmm.
to grab onto.
Yeah, that was my impression as well. Like, I think this is kind of a great starting point, but when I read gives meaningful experiences towards diverse users, my question is immediately, what experiences, what users, how do you approach it? I don't know that much about how this person thinks about it. Any other kind of last, or I guess first impressions? I'll also show you the experience section as well.
Seems very basic.
Very basic. Yeah, so we're seeing a couple bullet points. So it's definitely filled out, but not a ton like what I'm noticing is that it focuses on the deliverable, but not the process. So, we've created a mobile application, client-side view, but how was that done? That's not necessarily a question that I know the answer to. Okay, cool. Let me keep moving in the interest of time. So this is another person, Stephanie, visual designer, illustrator, motion graphics. So they're currently a student at Seattle Central Creative Academy, some kind of experience with motion design, especially a couple other design disciplines I see called out. Any first impressions or thoughts about this profile, especially when kind of comparing the two, if you were viewing them very quickly?
I'm seeing some keywords in the about section that might help if somebody was looking for a candidate with some of that background, or if they were trying to match. So they may have had a little bit more time to think about what kind of work they want to do and how they want to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's why both of these profiles came up, is they have designer multiple times, including the headline. Cool. Any other, maybe like, as you read this, impressions if you were looking for someone for a UX design role? Anything standing out?
I think what stood out for me was how Stephanie said that an interest in illustration and motion.
Mhm.
Because it shows like Stephanie might be intrigued to like learn more and have a full commitment of what she's going to get herself into in the job experience. So yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. So she definitely has like a clear area of expertise. She does visual design, but motion graphic design is an area of focus, which I think really is important in the job search. People want to know what your expertise is. Cool. Yeah, I can expand some of these.
There's a bit more work history there.
Mhm.
The last profile had maybe just a few months, where she's got a few years.
Right. So longer term experience. Yeah, for sure. And more detail. Yeah, so the last profile had maybe 1 to 2 bullets. This has multiple. Yeah, I think if this person was my, like, kind of putting on my mentor cap, I might ask, like, is there a meaningful way to combine some of these or focus more on impact? So when I think of a resume or a LinkedIn, it should be a set of job accomplishments, not job responsibilities. So these things are of course important, right? Checking in clients, managing major crises, that actually, to me, is really interesting. I would almost want to have that further up to say, how do you manage crisis? How do you manage a lot of different things? Because you'll probably be doing that in the job. So when you're setting up your LinkedIn, your resume, make sure the really impactful things are up front, what you accomplished, and then followed by the tools of how you did it. Okay. I think this is we'll end on this one just for the sake of time. So Lisa, UX design lead at Launch Consulting. What stands out about this profile if we're looking at maybe the top part, and then I'll start here and then we can go down. Anything standing out from this part? Lack of keywords, yeah. So we're seeing UX design lead, a company name, but that's about it.
She's open to work.
Yes, exactly. So she has the open to work filter on her photo, and then I'm seeing this here. This is kind of like something about LinkedIn, but if you're open to work, you can also set the privacy settings so people at your own company don't see it if you're maybe trying to switch. So this suggests maybe everybody can see it. Yeah.
How do you know that I can see? I'm not looking for the job.
No, I'm curious. I'm curious.
Oh, about this part?
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, can you scroll? So this is blocking that. So can you scroll past the name? Oh, right there.
Yeah, so I can show you what this looks like. Yeah, so if you fill out this open to work feature, I'll show you on my profile as well if I can. You can add, I think, up to 5 job titles. I think maybe up to 5 places you want to work, including remote. So this person has said remote / Seattle. Yeah, and you can say kind of like, how deep are you into the job search? So I think mine always says like casually looking, so recruiters can still reach out to me, which I think is
smart. Can't see that.
Yeah, so you can set it so people at your own company can't see it, which is very real, right? So you don't want people to always know that you're looking, So yeah, I use this a lot. I'm just saying, okay? Yeah, and so she also has it up here. So even if somebody only saw her photo here, like kind of in this preview, they would still see open to work. So that's a difference I'm seeing from the other profiles. Okay. Yeah, I'll give everyone a second to kind of read over this. I'm seeing UX designer, bleeding heart for people, making people's lives easier, loves research. I'll tell you one thing that stands out to me as somebody in this field is that she doesn't have a portfolio. So she's kind of saying, hit me up if you want to talk. But if I was a recruiter, I would want to see some kind of website or follow-up of her actual work. When I applied to Microsoft, I had like a very basic website, but I had a website. So this is kind of similar to an elevator pitch, is telling people like how to engage with you. Feel free to DM me if you have new opportunities, learn more about my work here, reach out to me at this email. That can help kind of close the gap. So that's something that I noticed.
And then what do you think about links? So like the different profiles
Mm-hmm.
you showed folks that have like one thing, people at points, but like as far as length is there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your impressions of it?
To me, I feel like it's a lot. That seems like a lot to me.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm like a recruiter, I'm looking at multiple things. I definitely want to, like you were saying, you know, consolidate some of the stuff that they're saying. But her amount seems to me.
Yeah, were you gonna say something, Aki?
I think just similarly, I would cut it down a little bit, maybe
Mhm.
200 words, maybe 150 max.
Yeah, and I kind of refreshed to show you that the about section shows up this way first. So typically you're only seeing the first 3 lines unless you expand. So my advice is usually to have a really, really strong first sentence that catches a recruiter's attention if they're only spending 7 seconds on your, like people spend 7 seconds on your resume, if it was 7 seconds on your LinkedIn. But then if they are interested and say, oh, well, I'm seriously considering this person, then they can learn more. So it's kind of the long and short, literally, of it. I'm trying to remember what I do because mine is quite long, I'll admit, but I use emojis to break it up because I'm fun. And also for me as like a content strategist, as a writer, I think it's fair. So this is kind of something that Emily had set up front. I talk about these things that I love, storytelling and tech, creativity and strategy. But then I sort of have this arrow to be like, do you want to learn more? Are you interested? And then I have it kind of like broken up in all these different ways. Because people find me for a lot of different things, just because I'm further in my career. Some people want to book with me, some people want me to speak, some people are interested in my journey. So I've used emojis and content to essentially break it up. Not that one is more right than the other, but I find that this has worked for me. Yeah, cool. I know it's already 1. Should we like kind of wrap up or?
How are folks feeling? I think you can use the time however you want.
Okay. Okay. In the interest of time.
I did have one question. How do people recover their LinkedIn?
Recover?
Their account, if they forgot their password.
No.
Oh, never mind.
So LinkedIn was new like 4 or 5 years ago. My employer made one for me. I guess like your employers like automatically made one, and then it's just my work email. I no longer have that. So every time I try to recover, it wants me to add a credit card.
Oh, maybe for LinkedIn Premium or something?
I don't know, so I don't want to pay. So I'm like, why would I have to use a credit card?
Yeah.
Make one with your personal.
That's what I would suggest. Yeah, because you never want your LinkedIn tied to your employer because your employer will not always be your employer. You know what I mean?
Together with my personal and my
Oh.
employer.
If you,
So it's kind of weird. I was like,
have you ever tried to create a brand new one with just your personal email?
I have not.
Yeah, I think that's worth a shot, trying to recreate it with your personal email and making sure you don't link it. You could even try with like a Google sign-in or something that's like a different login mechanism. Probably your best bet.
You shouldn't have.
Yes, you don't have to pay for LinkedIn. You can if you want.
Don't owe them anything.
You don't owe them anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Cool. Yeah, well, I think in the interest of time, we'll wrap here, but I'll send out my slides as a reference. You can present with watermarks. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to learn more about LinkedIn and also your elevator pitch. These are just some different ways to connect with me. Obviously LinkedIn, but you can also check out my website for more resources and message me if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Aleenah, for joining us. Thank you, Emily from Scope, for coming out, making the trip down from King County. And for you, Aleenah, we do present a small gift of our appreciation.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Great. And so as we're just closing up here, I'm actually going to stop our recording and bring us back.